Hi, this is just a quick video to introduce the lessons that you're going to watch on the video, which in fact was taken from some of my modules on the Academy that I run. And it's about protecting products, whether it's e-commerce, transit packaging for engineering and all that sort of stuff. So these lessons were filmed quite a while ago and I felt they needed a bit of an introduction. So enjoy watching them. If you have any issues or any questions, please contact me because I can probably help you and give you some advice. Thanks for watching this bit. Heavy industrial parts, their transit chains, etc. So I just thought I'd give you a flavour of what are worth considering and not considering in terms of origami and design for protection. So here is a little pack I did for somebody who asked me to do a mail order pack for honey. Now honey is a very sticky product, so if you don't get the package right and it gets dropped, you're going to end up with a really gunky mess. So it's got to be done properly. So here I put the jar in a tube, die cut, and then it's trapped within an outer box. So I'll just show you the top view. So there's the tube in the center, and it's trapped by the connected web corner flaps of the box, so it can't twist around. So basically the sides of that jar are well away from all the sides of the box, and also the top and the bottom of the bottle or the jar are held away from the top area, so there's a crumple zone between the top of the jar and the bottom and top of the box. So that worked. If you want to have a look at the video for the drop testing for this, just click anywhere on that photograph and it should take you to my YouTube channel and you can see the drop test that I did. It worked, customer was perfectly happy and he bought some. So that's all I ever really worry about. So here's another example that I have seen quite a lot of times, this type of pack on LinkedIn, where they look beautiful. Some of them are absolutely fantastic, printed all over. And they are definitely great examples of delight and reveal for e-commerce customers. However, what we don't really know under here, but I'm predicting that there's nothing underneath that platform, such as this type of platform. It's void at the back. So you're relying on a platform that's 3mm thick, B-flute. That might even be E-flute, I'm not sure. So if that gets dropped on its side and there's another bottle on top of it, as soon as it hits the deck, that top bottle is just going to crash through that board because there's nothing to stop it. It'll crash into the bottom bottle, and before you know it, you've got a gin or a wine dispenser all over the floor. So I wouldn't do it like that necessarily. It looks nice and I would finish it off like this, but I would also put some extra protection underneath it. So here I've got a set of cellular support devices just interlocking. They're fold over pieces of board for each section, and you simply put this over put the platform over the dividers, put the cell supports, whatever. And so if you made it out of the right board grade, when there's a bottle in here and a bottle here, and it drops and hits the deck, the supports behind it actually give it support. So don't always rely on just the platform itself doing the job. It might not. So otherwise you'll end up with another dispenser, as I say. So that's something to consider. It's easy to do. They're only little die cut fold overs. If you get the right B-flute material, it will be absolutely fine. Okay, so also you might have noticed I put that in an 0426, my favourite type of e-commerce box. The other thing to point out is things might look light, but actually they're quite heavy when they hit the deck through inertia. So this bottle of shampoo is 500 mils, so that's about half a kilo. And if you've got 3 of them, all one top of the other, dropping down because that's the way it's being dropped, then you've got a kilo crashing down on the bottom bottle. Now these are plastic, so they're not going to break, but it's not going to look very good if the customer opens it and it's an expensive product, that you've got 3 bottles still, but the whole of the packaging inside is completely disintegrated. So just bear that in mind as well. There's no reason why you couldn't use this type of support inside for this type of product as well. Okay. Now this is another interesting thing. I always think about go big. Okay, so why am I showing you this? Well, sometimes people use the edges of corrugated board or fittings to stop something from moving about. So I've got a can here, but if this can was dropping vertically and it hit the deck and it was being supported by the edge of the board, all you'd get is a massive dent inside the can. Now, I suppose it doesn't really matter, but if it's a nice expensive can or something else, it's going to look a bit nasty, and the customer's not necessarily going to be happy. If it's glass, it may well actually shear the glass if it's dropped like that and it hits the deck. So that's why we use dividers. You know, you're using the face of the board always to protect it from being dropped down. So dividers and any buffer fittings that you need to protect a delicate product, you need to go big and make sure that it's the full face of the board that's actually stopping the product from moving and getting damaged. Okay. So there are exceptions, of course. If you have little pots of cream and stuff like that, yogurt, then these trays that you see here, that's a typical example. Yes, sure, they're being held by the edges of the board, but they're very light. They're not really going to come to any harm. So it's horses for courses, basically. And here's one I saw a photograph of. I'm not quite sure where I got it from, but I've rotated this picture round. It was actually standing upwards, but this is what would happen if it was dropped on its side. It's a huge sort of glass bell jar, really. I don't quite know what it's for, but if it gets dropped from any height above, say, 500 mil, that glass jar or whatever is just going to snap at the point where I've arrowed and said snap, because the inertia is just going to use the edge of the board as a knife, really, to break through that glass, and it will just break. So people don't necessarily think about the consequences of what's going to happen if this pack gets dropped on all 4 sides, all 6 faces, whatever, all corners or edges. So just bear that in mind. Go big. Use the face of the board, not the edge of the board. So what does bold mean? Well, you have to sort of exaggerate things, if you like. So here's a pack. It's been around for decades, this sort of tube with flick outs for bottles of wine, basically. So you don't want to lose a bottle of wine in transit if it's being sent by the e-commerce chain. Don't forget, e-commerce chains have massive amounts of touch points, 50 possibly, where you have to consider that the delivery, if you're not in, the delivery driver has to take it back to the depot, and they have to attempt to deliver it 3 times before you might take delivery of it. If you're not there 3 times, it goes back through the chain, reversed, all the way back to the person who bottled and packed the bottle in the first place. So there's a huge amount of touch points. Any point in that touch area or chain, it could get dropped. So it has to sustain a lot of damage, certainly if you haven't got it right, or it will sustain a lot of damage if you haven't got the design right, I should say. I did tell you these are unedited. So here's another example of what I did. I make those flick outs a lot wider. If you get the board grade correct, and it needs to be a reasonable heavy fluting as well to withstand a drop test for a bottle of wine, especially on its face side like that, from 900 mil. You might think it's not possible, but actually it is. It does work. Here's a drawing for one of these fittings, and you'll see there's top and bottom flaps as well. So underneath and on the top of the bottle, there are 4 thicknesses of B-flute, plus the thicknesses of the box, whatever design that is. If it's an 0203 or an 0427 or something like 0471, there's a lot of protection. And I have dropped literally hundreds of bottles of wine in fittings like this as drop tests under controlled conditions, and you probably get a 98% success rate. Where it doesn't work is usually where the glass is quite weak or thin or cheap. And there's another, just an example of how you might display a bottle of wine next to a 2-pack in an e-commerce box, so that when the customer opens it, it looks nice, you can see the product, but it's also protective for drop tests. I've shown you this before. This was another one. This surprised me when we first did it. It was done by somebody else. I didn't do this. But if you drop it on its end, you'd think those two glasses in the center would break. But funny enough, they didn't, because the way it's constructed. That's a bit weird, but it works. So you sometimes have to be not only bold, you have to be a bit experimental as well. Just a little pack here that I did an exploratory test for UN. Someone wanted this to pass a UN drop test. These are tiny little, about 4 inches long. I think they're some sort of igniter for gas fires or something. But they have to have a drop test because of something that's inside them, presumably the flint or something. I don't really know. So this was a design that's done by somebody else. I didn't do it. All I did was get the packs, and then I drop tested them on my drop tester to see if they would actually survive. Well, they did, except they kept disappearing underneath the platform because there's nothing to stop it. Under the impact, the whole shake and inertia meant that the product went underneath the platform. But that was considered a pass because the product actually didn't get damaged. So that's a lucky one, but obviously it's not going to apply to anything that's dangerous or with chemicals or something like that. If that leaked then or got damaged, then that would be a failure. So they're just a few tips about how to use origami to protect your product. So don't forget, if you have problems or you want to know more, just contact me on my WhatsApp platform, Ask Mick, and we can go through it. And if you want to know more about it or you want to see more examples, then I would probably make another lesson up out of that. So in the meantime, you're good to move on to lesson 8. Thank you.